This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about Steam Deck's third anniversary, the myriad issues with the NVIDIA 50 series cards, the cancellation of the previously announced Wonder Woman game, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 73. I am your host, the man who plays too many different games, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me as always, the man who has too many different games, Justin, better known as I am Zeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Well, excuse me, in a, I guess, similar or related topic, my friend's Steam Deck that I sent in for repairs came back in, tested it, works well, everything seems fine, everything is working well. I went ahead before I handed it back to him, just also tried downloading a few games and testing them out just to make sure everything's fine. Everything seemed well. Tried charging it in just to make sure that was working. That was also working, so everything was good and dandy. So I gave it back to him. He was thrilled about that. He wanted to get back to playing his games there, especially, I think he said he was working on Yakuza 0 and Chained Echoes, and he said he wanted to get back to playing those games, so definitely glad to hear that. Though, sadly, he told me his PS5 is having issues with that, and so one issue, now another one, but hopefully that one's not as complicated as the Steam Deck, but that was good there. And I guess because he got his Steam Deck repaired, or I sent that in for him to get repaired, I thought about it, and it's something I've been meaning to do for a while, and I'm making sure I have everything set up because I took a few components out at the time, trying to get my old MacBook repaired, sending that in to get repaired because that's just beyond me for trying to get that fixed, or at least even attempting to. It's more than I want to try. So I want to get that fixed. I'm getting everything set up now to get that repaired, and then assuming it's fixed, it can be fixed, I'll try to get back to using it so I can actually do maybe some music production. We'll see how that goes, but that's pretty much it though.
Good stuff. Well, let's see here. My week, it's been a week, I guess. Saturday, thankfully, was a very productive day. I was able to get all the things on my list completed, so there was, of course, finishing up that Hellblade comparison. I got that all done. And then I got my taxes done, finally. I mean, well, I guess not really finally, but finally, in that usually I try to do it like as early as possible, and this time I had put it off for a bit. Partially because I wasn't entirely sure exactly how things would turn out on that front. I had last year or earlier this year, I guess it was last year, I was just in a spot where I needed to sell some of the stocks that I had, which were just things that I had inherited from my parents. And in that case, it was, I was selling them at a loss. So I figured it probably wouldn't have a negative impact on my taxes, because even though I sold enough to get a pretty good amount of money, it was still just kind of like I was paranoid that it was going to be a problem. Even though I pretty much always get a maximum refund because single income household and 3 kids. So it's like I always have the child tax credit and earned income credit because of that, and so it's like I usually get a large refund every year, even though I'd really rather just not have so much money taken out, and then it's like, yeah, sure, the refund's nice, but it'd be better if I just had the money throughout the year instead of having so much go to taxes. But anyway, so yeah, that got done, and when I had replaced the battery in my wife's car, there's one of the bolts that was attached to one of the terminals for, on probably on the positive terminal, and the bolt fell down into the car, but it fell down in such a way that, like, I mean, it was like a special kind of bolt that was specific to that vehicle, and I couldn't get to it. Like, I just couldn't figure out how to get to it, and so we hadn't been able to use the car for a while because that was part of the problem. It was also that the brace that holds down the battery, the way it's set up is it's like a metal bar, and then it has like hooks that hook onto a hole on each side of the battery so that it holds it firmly in place. But I hadn't been able to find where one of the hooks went on one side, so it wasn't holding the battle steady or stable enough to where sometimes the car just wouldn't start. And I knew it wasn't a problem with the battery, it was just a problem with that stuff. So I ended up finding replacement for the bolt. I actually got 4 of them just so that I would have extras. Super cheap. It was like $6 for a 2-pack. So, very cheap, very good. And then, so I took the battery back out very carefully so that I didn't drop it like the one time. You put the bolt back in properly, just because of the way it's configured. That was really the best way to do it with the battery out. Figured out where the hook would go into for the one side of the brace, the bracket, and then put the battery back in, got everything firmly reattached, and now the car's working great the way it's supposed to. I mean, it's still, it's going to need an oil change, and even though I can do the oil change myself, I prefer just paying someone to do it, because usually it's like, oil change is like $30. I'd rather just pay someone else to do it, because then they can replace the filter and everything else, and it works out a lot better that way. So I haven't changed the oil in any of my cars in probably 10 years. Because I think the last time I changed the oil in my car myself was when my parents were still in Alaska. Because I remember doing it in their garage. And so since then, partially because of the fact that I usually end up I had to take the car in for other reasons, particularly because in Alaska we had to change our tires between winter and summer, have snow tires, because you couldn't have snow tires on your car during during the summer, because it messed up the road and also wore down the studs and stuff like that. But the problem is that one of my tires didn't have its own separate rim, and so I basically had to have someone mount and balance it for me. So I just figured, I just pay someone else to do that. Plus it saves me the trouble, because I hated changing out tires, especially having to do it out on what was usually a gravel road. And so it's like, it was just a hassle. I hated doing it. I did it a bunch of times, and then eventually I just got to a point where it's like, what? I'm tired of doing this myself. I'm going to pay someone else to do it instead. It's like, they can do it a lot faster. They can, they have their lift that makes it super easy and super fast to do. So I have them do that. If I need the oil change, I have them change the oil. They can get it done way faster than I can for everything, even though the oil change doesn't take very long. So yeah, it's like, I have the skills. I know how to do it. I've done it before myself. I even had to do it a couple years ago, swapping out one of the tires when I accidentally destroyed one of my tires. But anyway, that being said, I got that done. There's something else productive I did. I don't remember what it was. But anyway, there was just a handful of productive things that I got done on Saturday, and then I still had time for gaming, so it was nice. So this week I ended up not bothering putting together my cooking video. I just didn't really feel like taking the time to do it, and had other stuff I had to take care of, so that didn't get done this week. But I feel like there's something else I've done, but I can't remember what it was. All I know is that this Sunday we're doing music at the church. One of the guys who's around my age is getting married on Saturday, and so he unfortunately we can't go to it because it's 4 hours away, and it's like middle of the afternoon on Saturday, and with the amount of time it takes to get there, then the time for the wedding and the reception, we'd be getting back really late, and since we have to be up early the next morning, it's just ultimately it works out. I mean, it works out better, especially because there's nobody else to do the music, and we didn't want to be in a position where it's like we got stranded or something. And I mean, even though it's less likely that would happen, if something like that happened, there'd be nobody to do the music, and it would just cause all sorts of issues. So yeah, we're doing music on Sunday, and yeah, I feel like I'm forgetting something, and I honestly can't think of what it is. I know that there's no birthdays I missed this time. That only happened the one time. And even then, that was only just I forgot to mention it. Not that I forgot it on the actual day. Yeah, seriously, I can't think of what, if anything, I'm forgetting about. There probably wasn't anything else important. There was plenty of gaming, though, in the past week, and I'll get to that when it's my turn. So, what have you been playing this past week?
All right, so I started off the week. I didn't intend on doing it, but I thought I might as well try to get some stuff done in the game. I did some Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and I went ahead, got some of the arena stuff done. I also got I unlocked all of the special commands, or all the special commands in the final. Oh gosh, I can't remember what it's, but like pretty much the ultimate attack. I unlocked all of those, leveled those up all the way, so that's done. It was a bit tedious, a bit grindy, but that was done. And then I decided maybe I should try my hand at the secret bosses now. So let me just say, I want to apologize to Lingering Will for every negative thing I said about him, because Vanitas Remnant, the first secret boss you get to face, is so cheap and broken, and I hate him for it. I mean, at least don't get me wrong, Lingering Will took me out in less than a second, but I felt like, okay, sure, also his attacks were always random too, so that also played a role as like how quickly I got defeated. But with Vanitas, it's like you mess up once, that's it for you, because you immediately have to just dash around and get out of the way, and if you mess up one time, you get blinded and you can't see, and then the next attack that hits you kills you. So I eventually just got to the point where I said, this isn't fun at all. So I just looked up strategies, and I found a great way to cheese him is to mess with his AI, lure him over to a corner, and just get behind a rock, and he'll be on the other side. Just throw a strike rate at him repeatedly, and it'll be enough to like stun lock him, where he'll try to counterattack, but he can't actually hit you. You just have your deck full of strike raids or different type of raids, and it takes a while, but after that, you beat him. And I was like, that's fine. I don't care if it was cheap. He's cheap. I'm gonna be cheap too. But then I decided to go and face Mysterious Figure. And as you can probably see in the gameplay footage, I'm not having a good time. However, even though I'm being wiped out repeatedly, constantly, and I still haven't beaten him yet, I feel more satisfaction playing him, because I'm like, okay, I'm not necessarily dying right away. I feel like this is kind of like on the realm of Lingering Will, where there are moves that could be countered, and there's stuff that I could do to, actually make the fight manageable. So because of that, I'm not raging out like I was with Vanitas Remnant. I mean, I'm still getting floored. I'm still getting mopped. But, I don't feel angry about it, though. So right now, I'm still trying to think about maybe there are some strategies I could do to, or at least just basic strategies, not trying to like cheese him or anything, but maybe there's like some sort of method to actually trying to learn all his attacks, something like that. Maybe there are special commands I need to put in my deck, which actually I think I saw a couple, which I think said something like make sure you have less than 4 cures, otherwise he'll he'll spam doom attacks, and then that just one shots you essentially. Um, and then also just like don't use any type of special slide or any type of special dodge roll. Just use the basic one, because otherwise you'll cut down your invincibility frames. So still just need to like work on more of that, but I'm not upset like I was with Vanitas Remnants. But yeah, that's essentially what I've been doing with that. Then I've gone back to playing some more Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I'm taking my time with it right now. I feel like when I was first playing it, I was trying to sort of rush through the game, but I am sort of slowly getting my way back into it. Partially, I'm slowing down because I want to make sure I remember all the controls as well, because that messed me up trying to get a couple fights in where I kept thinking about Birth by Sleep, thinking, okay, I need to hit the D-pad if I want to change my commands. I'm like, no, that switches the characters. It doesn't go through your menu. So just like trying to get into the swing of things on that end. And I thought about it because of the fact that the settings didn't really seem to have too much of an impact. I decided to try switching on HDR just for the fun of it. And I don't know if it has an impact or not. I haven't tested it yet completely with or without, but I noticed that in fights, it seems like the frame rate is dropping some, which I haven't noticed before. So I might go back again later and test and see if that's the issue or not, or if it's something else, or it could just be the area, because I don't know if that could be a thing or not. But yeah, so right now as far as the story goes, I'm just going through the quests, right? I mean, the side quests right now, doing stuff here and there. And that's essentially it for right now. I was hoping to go backtrack a little bit, because when I started the chapter, and that's right when you first meet Aerith and stuff, I noticed there was a piece of materia in the church that I was trying to get to, but it was being blocked by all those mysterious figures, and I couldn't get to it. So I went to go back and pick it up, but unfortunately, I can't leave the area right now because of the story. So I'm hoping that eventually I can maybe go back there.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know. Okay. Yeah, because I was like, I don't know what that materia does, but I want it. So yeah, but yeah, definitely good stuff there. And I also wanted to delve into my backlog, and I tried a game called The Exit 8. And the simplest way to put this game is PT playable trailer, which was later revealed as Silent Hills, mixed with Where's Waldo, essentially, because you are in a never-ending Japanese subway tunnel, and the only way to leave is to find anomalies that are in each passage. So if you go through, you see something that's off, you circle back, you go backwards, and then it takes you one step closer. You have to go through 8 different passages before you can actually get to the exit. But if you mess up, if you either think you saw an anomaly but there wasn't one, or if you missed an anomaly, it resets back to 0. And I mean, the game is short. I mean, you can beat it in 15 minutes. I think that's about how long it took for me to beat it. But if you don't know what you're looking for, it definitely can mess you up. Because when I was trying to play it over again to find all the anomalies, because there are at least 20, maybe 25 different ones in the game, I was trying to go back and find all of them for the achievement. That makes it more difficult, and it really stretches out the time even more, because sometimes it's hard to figure out what they are. And I will say this, the game runs on the Steam Deck. That's where I first played it at, but I would recommend not playing on the Steam Deck just because of the smaller screen, and you might want to, it might be a bit harder to see certain things. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it might be easier if you just don't play it on there. At least if you're trying to go for everything. I mean, I'm not going to try to go into too much things because I don't want to necessarily spoil it, because it is fun seeing different anomalies, and some of them are creepier than others. There's something that's like a big jump scare, but some of them will definitely make you... it definitely makes you sort of like go into a little bit of fight or flight mode
Hmm.
a couple times. But overall, it's a nice little, I guess you could say, experiment. I know that the developer made a game called, I think it's called Shinsenkan 8, which is sort of like another type of game where you're in a subway. You're actually in a subway train, and you need to get to the end of the subway train to beat the game. But there's also more other stuff as well. So I'm interested in checking that out sometime down the road. But this was fun. And then lastly, I played Satisfactory with some guys. Um, we definitely did not remember all of the controls for the game or even what we were working on initially. So it took a while to get back in the swing of things. But I will say though, unlike with Factorio, I'm much more competent with this game. I mean, I'm nowhere near the level as they are because I don't have that mindset where I'm good with organization
Hmm.
and strategic layouts, planning and stuff like that. But I can still work on finding minerals and stuff like that, getting stuff together, crafting the different stuff we need. So I'm contributing in that end. But we've been expanding our base. We've gotten new types of energy resources, and we've been trying to also max out all of our different research trees. So we're making progress on that end, and it's probably something where we're gonna be picking back and forth every week or so. So yeah, there's that, and that is everything.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, remake. You can go back and you can get anything. I mean, like it's not always immediately. There's different parts of the story, and um, but even if you get to the point where you're like at the very end, like right before the final fight, you can still go back. And I'm pretty sure there's fast travel at a certain point in the game. I mean, it's been a little while, but I'm almost positive on that front. So yeah, because the thing is that once you leave Midgar, you don't ever go back, and this game only is just Midgar. So, but yeah, good. All right. So, as referenced in my intro, I played a bunch of different games this week. Most of them were not very long, but I'll get some of the smaller things out of the way. Um, of course, I ended up playing. I ended up finishing up Lego Star Wars with my middle son, and I plan to never go back to that game if I can help it. Because, oh, man, there are just so many things I really don't like about that game. The number one thing though is I hate the fact that there's no split screen because it's so frustrating
Oh yeah.
when you are like one person wants to move forward and then the other person is like on the other side of the screen and you can't move, or like if one person moves too far then it pulls the other person, which can knock them off of an edge or what have you, and it's just really really annoying. So yeah, I just like I wish that I could like this game, but it also just doesn't control great. Like most of the Lego games are fine, but I feel like this one just is way worse when it comes to how it controls. And obviously it's just because it's one of the older Lego games, but yeah, it just the controls are not good in that one. So I'm glad we're done with that one. I'm sure some of the other ones are going to be similar in that respect, but I guess we'll just wait and see how things go on that front when we decide to play anything else. I know that he wants to play Lego City Undercover next. We didn't end up starting anything this week because we just finished up that game. The other kids wanted to play some Sonic and All Stars Racing Transformed though, so I ended up playing that with all of them a little bit, and none of them are very good at it, unfortunately. But that's not really surprising. I mean, the only racing game they've been playing is Mario Kart 7 and 8, so it controls differently because this one like uses the triggers for acceleration and drifting, whereas Mario Kart doesn't. So it's a bit different for them and all that, but it's still a fun game. I mean, that's really the only bit that I actually played of that game. was specifically with the kids. So there was that. I don't have any footage recorded of it, but I did boot up Freedom Wars on the Steam Deck, Freedom Wars Remastered, and I had heard that there was the original version of the game had no English voiceover. It was all Japanese voiceover, just with English subtitles, which was fine. They added English voiceover to this, and it seems like when it comes to the characters, it's all perfectly fine. Like I have very, very limited amounts of experience because I basically just played through part of the introduction of the game, and most of the voice acting is perfectly fine. But there's one part early on in the game where there's like this basically this mascot for the prison that you're in that talks to you, and it's very clearly text to speech, but really bad text to speech. Like, it is painfully bad. And I mean, like, mispronouncing words worse than like a lot of those current day videos with AI voiceover. Like, most of the current day AI voiceover things, like, they're bad, and they're bad in that they'll mispronounce words here and there, but they still don't. And like, you can still tell they're AI voices, but they're not that bad. This sounds more like the very early text to speech stuff where it's just like super robotic and sounds terrible. So that part is annoying. And unfortunately, at least at the very beginning of the game, there's no way to change voiceover options, because if there was, I probably would just switch it back to Japanese, because I mean, I usually use English voiceover, but in this case, it's just that text to speech is so bad. It is so bad, and it's just, I can't understand why they felt the need to do it for that particular thing when it seems like the rest of the voice acting is normal. Like, it sounds good. It sounds just as good as it should. But yeah, anyway. So that's the very little amount that I played. I didn't even play long enough to be able to save my game. I just basically booted it up briefly. 60 frames per second. There's not much of any settings that you have, but I did, max settings that I had available to me, and it, runs great. But I haven't recorded anything for it yet because I just wanted to boot it up briefly just to really just check it out briefly. Let's see here. Let me look at my list here. So then I decided, well, let me back up. Of course, I played plenty more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Not nearly as much as last week because I didn't have, basically 2 days of not doing anything. But I finished up, I think, chapter 8. Yeah, so I finished up Gold Saucer in the Coral Prison, which had like an interesting chase sequence. So yeah, I just did that, and so I didn't play a ton, but I played probably like a couple hours, and yeah, still good stuff. I got to do some chocobo racing, and that was fun. It's different from how it was in the original Final Fantasy VII for sure, but I mean, I thought it was, it's very good, very well done. So I enjoyed that, what I did of that. Did play some more Neo, and I got past that vampire lady thing, and did a couple side, like, it's not called side missions, whatever they are, but they're basically like shorter side missions, like I mentioned last week. So I did a couple of those, and I'd beaten that lady. Then I did the third story mission, which took me a handful of tries to get through the main boss there, because like there's a boss like basically at the halfway point that's pretty tough, and then after that you do a little more dungeon stuff, and then you have one more boss that was actually really easy. And I actually didn't record my winning attempt against the tougher boss, unfortunately, but I did at least get my recording of the vampire lady. So her footage is playing right now, and I ended up realizing that with her, the best thing to do was to try my best to stay further away from her when I was using like my spirit animal thing attacks, because even though they do a lot of damage, if you get too close to where she does, I mean, she ends up grabbing you and stuff. So it's mostly like the biggest thing was doing my best to avoid her grabs, and doing that made a big difference in the fight. So yeah, but anyway, so yeah, I got through that third mission, and after I did that, that basically unlocked the ability to go to the next area, but I haven't done that yet, mostly because there's still some side missions that I want to do. So, or some side missions that came up after I finished the third mission that I haven't done yet. So I will be doing those sometime soon. But some things that I ended up playing that were not specifically planned, but more just kind of happened because I happened to find some good deals. One was I grabbed and tried out Sonic Frontiers on Steam. I did not try this on the Steam Deck, mostly because I wanted to try it on my desktop first and foremost, since it seemed like Steam Deck was kind of mixed on performance. Like, it seems like with low settings and reduced scale, like doing it 50% scaling, you can get 60 frames per second, but I didn't really feel like trying that out. I just, installed it on PC and checked it out. It does run at locked 60. Unfortunately, that is all it does by default. I didn't look into whether or not it was possible to unlock the frame rate, but unsurprisingly, max settings on everything looks as good as it can. I don't think it's a particularly good looking game. I think it actually kind of looks bad. In terms of gameplay, I'm not sure what I think about it yet. I think I played for like probably 30 minutes or so. Just like fought like one of the bosses that you see in the open world, and apart from that, it's just a bit of wandering and stuff. And I think that my biggest issue is the controls don't feel like great to me. And granted, I'm not someone who really played 3D Sonic games, so probably for people who are more familiar with those, they would enjoy it a lot more than I did. So I'm kind of mixed, but it was like $18 for the game, so I thought that was worth taking a chance on, because it's a game I've been interested in for a long time. I just never grabbed it because it was a little too much for what I wanted to spend on it. But a game that I have been really interested in, that I checked out, and I haven't played a lot, but I have been super happy with visuals and performance, is Returnal. So I found on Instant Gaming it was like $24.62. The cheapest I've seen it before that was like $35. So I went ahead and grabbed it. I already know that it runs terribly on the Steam Deck, so I didn't even bother trying to install it there, because like it can drop into like the 12 to 15 digit or 12 to 15 frames per second, and it's like, that's not worth it to me. I'm not doing that. But on my PC, and this, I don't know how much of the performance issues that people were having before was based on just the launch version, how much of it is people using AMD cards. But when I run this thing with all epic visual settings, 1080p, unlocked frame rate, I'm getting 90 to 120 frames per second. And that's of course with ray tracing turned off. If I turn on all the ray tracing, I get around 70 to 80 frames per second. And so I've kind of gone back and forth on it. Like, it definitely looks a lot better with the ray tracing, but I do get extra frame rate if I turn it off. So the little bit that I played, I ended up doing ray tracing more than not, just because, getting 70 to 80, or really 70 to 90 frames per second with ray tracing on and all the visual settings maxed out, like, I was pretty happy with that. So in case you've never like really looked much into this game, it's very much like it's roguelite, like Hades, that sort of thing, where you do a run. When you die, there are certain upgrades that you keep, some that are just specific to to that specific run, and then like weapons you gain and that sort of thing are all permanent upgrades, and there's some other permanent upgrades. The levels, of course, rearrange themselves and reset, and it's all more or less procedurally generated. I've only played basically 3 runs. No, actually it was like 2.5. So I did 1 run, I got to like a boss and died. And then I started up a 2nd run and came across another boss-like enemy and died. And then I started a 3rd run and only played for a little bit before I suspended it, and haven't gone back to it since. But the game looks great. It controls really well. Honestly, like, I think this is, from what little bit I've experienced, it seems like this is going to be a stellar game, like everybody's been saying. And I think this is a game I'm really going to enjoy when I decide to really play it. I'm not really playing it right now because, more than anything, I just wanted to test it out. But, it appeals to me exactly the way that I thought it would. I have only tried playing with the DualSense so far because even though I wouldn't mind trying with the with mouse and keyboard, I had heard that this is one game where its use of the DualSense is actually not gimmicky. Like, it does use the DualSense in cool ways, but not in such a way where it's like, okay, I don't really need this. It would be perfectly fine without. And while I do think, I'm sure that if I were to, for example, switch to mouse and keyboard, I probably could, do this just fine without the DualSense. I think the DualSense does do some really cool stuff. Like, one such thing is each weapon has an alternate firing mode where, like, if you pull the trigger down halfway, it just uses the gun normally. If you pull it down all the way, then it does like a charging blast. And because of some of the features that are actually really cool about the DualSense, it's not like you have to manually get this perfect. It's more like, okay, it actually physically stops for you when you get to the midway point, and then of course if you pull harder, then it will do the full charging thing. The game runs really well, and I looked at it, and actually the requirements for this game, the recommended requirements, are below what my PC is, so quite a bit below. But anyway, so yeah, the game looks and runs great. It's definitely, I really like the gameplay, of course, being that Hades roguelike thing, and I feel like this is going to be a game I will get heavily invested into when I decide to play it. I guess one last thing I do want to mention is one of the reasons why I've settled more on doing the DualSense over trying out mouse and keyboard, at least for the time being, is mostly because of the fact that if I decide to stream this to my Steam Deck, then I can still, play with a control. I mean, then it's not going to be, awkward going from mouse and keyboard to controller. It's just easier to, have that obvious transition switching between the two. But yeah, super happy with how it runs and how it looks and everything else. So always good when that sort of thing happens. And I'm not positive. I think that I'm pretty sure PS5 has a performance mode on this, so it probably does do 1080p 60. I doubt it looks as good at 1080p 60 on the PS5 as it looks on my PC, but I think PC we have better textures and stuff too. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. Maybe their fidelity mode has the same textures and just only 30 frames, but regardless, it looks cool. I like it. I'm enjoying what little I played. But then I also decided to boot up a game I had bought a while ago that like I've just been interested in it. I've heard it's great, and I had not tried it out at all. But I'd heard it's also, I mean, it's also Steam Deck verified, so I thought, hey, okay, that's another game worth trying out. And that is Guardians of the Galaxy. With low settings, couple minor modifications, the game can run at a fairly stable 40 frames per second. It does drop into the 30s occasionally, which for me on a portable device is fine. Low visual settings, it still looks really good. I mean, you'll see in the footage here on the video version where it still looks very, very good at low settings. I was shocked at how good it looked. Granted, that is 100% scaling, so it's not like lower scaling to make it run better. However, something really important and troublesome initially. So the Steam Deck by default only uses, or at least in some games, I don't know exactly how it's set up, only uses 1 gig of the video RAM. And so when you start up this game, like it'll be fine initially, then it will drop to literally single frames per second. And I just was like, it boggled my mind how this could even be possible. Like it was to the point where I couldn't do anything in the game. I couldn't even bring up a menu because it was 1 frame per second, most of the time. And I had no idea why. So I did a little bit of digging online. I finally found I tried a couple different things that weren't working. Ultimately, it was a pretty simple fix, which was just you go into the boot menu, which is just holding down the plus button on the Steam Deck when you power it on. And then you go to like some advanced settings and change it so that the video RAM it uses by default is 4 gigs. And then from there, ran great. No problems at all. So, yeah. It's one of those where I feel like it's kind of hard to say whether this game should actually be verified, because yeah, if you do that and it's a very simple fix, then yeah, it runs perfectly fine. I think it deserves the verified badge. But if you don't do that, it doesn't run. And it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? And like I couldn't even get to like the Steam menus and stuff because it was running so horribly. And I've never seen a game do that. I mean, even games like Horizon Forbidden West, that certainly does not run well, looks terrible on the Steam Deck, and all that, run way better than that. I mean, they're at least technically playable, even if dropping down occasionally into the 20s is certainly not ideal, which is one of the reasons why I stopped trying to play it on the Steam Deck. But yeah, that was horrible. So anyway, once I got that sorted out, I ended up playing some more, and really I was just playing this for the sake of testing because I wanted to check out the game, and I figured might as well check it out just because I was feeling a little restless. And earlier today I ended up playing a bit more, and I'm digging it. I really like this game. It's so you only play as Peter Quill, who's Star-Lord, and you basically can just command your party members to do various attacks. You just hold down left button or L1, and then you just select the character and what attack you want to do, and it slows down time, that sort of thing, when you're doing that. So from that standpoint, it's like pretty simple to control. I put it on hard difficulty to start just because I've been kind of on more of a hard kick since playing Dark Souls, and some other games like Ghost of Tsushima and various other things. So I've been playing on hard. Hasn't been bad at all. I mean, like, it's nowhere near Dark Souls difficulty. From what little I played, I've finished the first 2 chapters, and I'm not planning on like really sticking with this game right now. But I played more than I thought I would, because initially I was just like, okay, I'll play for a little bit, and then I just turned it on earlier today since I still had it. I hadn't closed out the game, and just played a bit more. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just play a little more. And combat feels pretty decent so far. You mostly just have guns. I haven't unlocked much of any abilities yet, so I'm sure as I unlock more abilities, it'll feel even better. But yeah, I've been impressed with it. I mean, I knew it was going to be good because I'd heard lots of good things, and it definitely has that same Guardians of the Galaxy humor that was in like the movies and stuff, and I enjoyed the movies quite a bit, even if the second one wasn't great. Still better than most of the Marvel movies, but yeah, it's good so far. I guess that's all I really have to say about that. But the last game I decided to play. So first of all, I want to say there was a point over the weekend where I was just getting a little bit annoyed with Neo. Mostly just that vampire lady was getting on my nerves, and I was getting tired of trying to beat her, and I just wasn't beating her. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna install Dark Souls 2. I'm gonna try that out for a little bit. Try it out for a little bit with the sorcery build initially, and when I started this game, it controls completely differently from the other Dark Souls games. They changed around buttons for a bunch of different things, to where I couldn't even like remap buttons on the Steam Deck to make it work the way I needed it to work. And so I stopped playing. I was really annoyed with it, and I was frustrated because I wanted to give the game a fair shot, but I was finding that, okay, these controls are just not working for me, and I just couldn't figure out how to get it quite right. And I knew that if I really was going to give the game a shot, I probably was just going to have to deal with the difference in the controls. Map things to the back buttons that I could map, like just the button that's used for using items, and the button that's used for sprinting, which are the 2 main things that I need. So I went ahead and did that, and then I decided to boot it up again yesterday. Started over, because I hadn't played much of anything. I'd played like 20 minutes or something, with a strength build, because I remembered, that's usually a good place to start, because sorcery is fun when you are really familiar with all the systems, but strength is better for just getting into it as a new player. And because this game is so different, I really just wanted to give it a fair shot. So I haven't even started playing the footage from it yet. I've played quite a bit. Now, when I say quite a bit, I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm far in the game. I basically, but I did play for, I think, several hours. The controls are still throwing me off quite a bit. I still keep accidentally, like, before I always had B as my confirm button, and so probably because first time I played Dark Souls was on Switch, and so A was in that spot and everything. But the of course the dodge being on B instead of, well, you can, yeah, the dodge is on B. Jumping, you can have it either as B or pushing in on the left stick. and you can't customize any of the other controls at all, which is why I was having so many issues. Because if I could have customized the controls, I would have been able to just get it playing, or controlling the same way as Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3, but I couldn't do that. So I'd forgotten to mention that. So I'm still thrown off a bit by a lot of the differences in controls, but I've been enjoying it ish. It's still kind of early for me to make a firm determination on what I think of the game. I did get through the first boss, the last giant, which is what the footage is that's here. And something that I can't believe it took me as long as it did to figure out. I mean, I literally had to look it up because I just clearly wasn't paying close enough attention. I kept expecting that you could level up at bonfires like you can in Dark Souls 1. Turns out there's only one place where you can level up, in Majala, and you have to talk to the firekeeper lady, whatever she is. And I didn't realize that. And so I wasted a bunch of souls when I could have leveled up, all because of the fact that I didn't realize that I had to talk to her in order to level up. So I probably lost like 4 or 5 levels worth of souls that and it wasn't like, oh, I died on my way to a bonfire. No, it's more like I didn't realize that I had a way to level up, because I was kind of thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm just still in the tutorial or something, like in Dark Souls 1, where you can't level up initially because you have to wait until after you get back to the firekeep. No, why can't I not think of what the main area is called? I mean, I want to say Firekeeper Shrine, but that's not right.
Firelink Shrine?
Firelink, thank you. Firelink Shrine. You had to wait till you get to Firelink to actually be able to level up. It's like, no, that wasn't the case, especially because as I was going, it's like, okay, well, this doesn't make sense. This is way bigger. And really, the tutorial area was before you even get to Majala, so... Anyway, so I wasted a bunch of souls because it took me way longer than it should have to realize that. And I actually didn't realize it until I looked it up. And then I forgot about the fact that I could fast travel, and so I wasted more souls because of that. So it's just like... yeah. So... controls aside, which is certainly an annoyance, it's something I'm just little by little getting used to. And to be clear, like, I don't know if I'm playing this game or just playing a little bit here and there, but I'm kind of in between on it. I hate the healing in this game because it is so slow. I mean, you get more healing items technically, but you start with one Estus flask, and you have to get an Estus flask shard each time to gain an additional Estus flask. And so it's like you have very little healing. Even with the Estus flask, which heals a good amount of health, it slowly fills up your bar. And like if you're using one of the I can't remember the names of the stones, but there's like healing stones that you use. Even when you use one of those, it doesn't heal for as much, and they're more plentiful, of course, which is nice. But they're very slow on healing, and while they will continue to heal you until they're done, even after you've gotten hit, of course, the Estus Flask doesn't do that. It's just like it heals you a large amount, but if you get hit while you're getting healed, well, too bad. And it is just like, well, screw you. I don't like you, And so it's just... I can see why people hate this game. And but I've also heard from quite a few people who are like new to the Souls games and that sort of thing, or, new to Dark Souls 2, that have said, as much as people have maligned it, I ended up really liking it. And so I'm willing to give this game a chance. I'm not giving up on it. I'm just not sure if I'm like playing it or kind of playing it, because, like, I like Dark Souls. I like Dark Souls 1. I like Dark Souls 3, even if not as much as Dark Souls 1. And I want to judge the game for myself. And I know that there's going to be frustrations. I have no idea if I'll do the DLC, but I'm at least playing for now ish. And of course, I think also the fact that I'm working on Neo at the same time also makes me a little more hesitant. If I wasn't doing Neo right now, I probably would be more interested in just playing this one. But yeah, I haven't fully decided what I think about Dark Souls 2 just yet. I'm still way too early in the game to be able to say one way or the other. I will say though that first boss was not too bad. The last giant. I mean, he did take me several tries, but it was really more because I made dumb mistakes. Like I didn't move out of the way from his stomping foot, quickly enough, and or like I was too close to him when he was swinging his arms. Even though like it really was not difficult to dodge his attacks, it was just not being smart. Is really what it came down to. But yeah, I think honestly, my biggest frustration about this one so far is really just the difference in the controls and why it is that they felt the need to. It's not even that they changed the controls, it's the fact that you can't modify the controls unless you're doing mouse and keyboard. If you're doing mouse and keyboard, you can customize it to your liking. And yes, technically, I could customize the mouse and keyboard controls and then assign all the buttons to those, the same keyboard, functions so that I could get basically the controls I'm looking for. But I haven't been willing to do that mostly because I felt like that's going to throw me off more than just learning the different controls. So, that is basically where I will briefly mention that I did try out Koromon, which was the free Pokemon-like game that we got through Amazon Prime a while ago, just because I was curious about it. I played it for like 10 to 15 minutes, basically just long enough to get a Koromon and then do like a couple of battles, and that was about it. I wasn't really like, oh, I want to play a Pokemon game. This is more like, I'll check it out. And the funny thing is, because of the fact that it's all 2D sprites, the frame rate is atrocious, but it's not like the game feels bad because I should say the frame rate, if you're standing still, most of the time there's nothing moving. Like you'll have like one or two sprites like moving back and forth, but it's all sprite based, and so like the game looks great. I love the sprite art style and all that, but like it'll say it's 2 frames per second because if you're standing still, there's none of the stuff in the background's moving, and it's just that's the way the game's designed. It's not, yeah. I mean, it's not that bad when you're actually like in battle and that sort of thing, but there's just not a ton of animations involved, which is fine. I mean, for this type of game, it doesn't really matter. It's not like it's running badly. It's just that's how the game runs. That's how the game's made. And this is one game where I'm okay with that. So, but yeah, I don't have any footage for that either. That's everything.
All right, so where do I even begin? So I'll start with Dark Souls 2. So I guess first thing I want to say is how familiar are you with the different gameplay mechanics that 2 has specifically?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, I guess for one thing, are you familiar with the fact of what adaptability is and what it does?
No.
Okay, so with Dark Souls 2, they changed your iframes with your dodge rolls, and it's linked solely to your adaptability. So okay. I think if you get it up to, I don't remember what you start off with, but in order to get it to match the iframes you have in Dark Souls 1, you need to have at least 25 points in there. To have it match that. Otherwise, you have fewer iframes and it's harder to dodge that way. Next thing to know is the fact that enemies have a limited respawn. So I can't remember what the maximum number of times is, but essentially after a certain number of respawns, they don't respawn ever again.
Huh.
So if you're trying to like farm for different things, it's going to be a lot harder to do
Yeah.
it. Um, and the only way to actually get them to respawn is to use an item that will get them to respawn. But the catch is it bumps up the difficulty to the next tier. So like if you're playing at new game, it bumps the difficulty for the entire game to new game plus.
Lovely.
And again, they still have those respawns that are limited. So once those are gone and you use the item again, bumps up to new game plus too, and et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, another mechanic that was introduced for this one, which I can see what they were doing. I haven't experienced it too much from when I was playing, and I think I got to the point where it was right before that mechanic was actually kind of important, which was the use of actual darkness and needing to have a torch to see around. And the problem with that is that the torches have limited fuel, so I think you either have to get more torches or you have to have fuel to light them, because otherwise they'll go out, and if you're in a dark area, you're gonna have a hard time seeing around, especially if you're trying to like backtrack, unless you have like a homeward bone or something like that. So that's something also to keep in mind if you decide to like play it long enough for right now. I mean, later on you'll probably come back to the game, but if you're playing the game right now, that's something to keep in mind of that. You'll need to know that. And then I guess one last thing to also know is that some people complain about this. I haven't experienced it too much, or at least I haven't experienced it much yet. Is that there are some enemies, the placements might be a bit undesirable because they'll just be ganging up on you more than you would possibly expect.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I know that's something that some people complain about this game. I haven't experienced it much. I've probably experienced about maybe 2 or 3 times in my gameplay. But that's also just like one last thing that people have talked about. But I think the main things that I always want to mention though were just the fact that adaptability is key. Like that's the first thing that I sort of leveled up because of my builds. Dodging is key for me, so I had to bump that up as much as possible. And I also was like farming souls to like get it up to that point, but also the fact that farming is going to be difficult because of the fact that they only respawn a certain amount of time. So that's something else to also keep in mind on that end. But yeah, definitely glad that you're giving it a shot. It's something that I'll eventually want to come back to, but that's definitely not something that is on the first on the foremost thought of my mind. So that can definitely wait there. But yeah, good stuff on that. Good stuff on that. But I guess sort of connected to that. No, I'm definitely glad that you're making more progress in Neo. Partially because I'm trying to remember what that was. What were the bosses that you fought, like the mid one and then the later one?
The boss was Nue.
Okay.
So it's like a dog lion demon thing.
With lightning?
Yep, with lightning. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Then yeah, so you've actually passed me because when I last played Neo, I faced that boss and then I probably went up a little bit further in the dungeon area, and then that was it for me before I stopped playing. But yeah, definitely glad that you found the later one much easier than that one, because that one I definitely agree that one was definitely tough to take on.
Yeah, the one at the end of the dungeon was a piece of cake. Like I beat it on my first try. It was not difficult at all. It was basically very similar to most human enemies. I mean, he had a few tricks up his sleeve, but like it really wasn't too bad. And I started figuring out some of the block attacks that I have. Not exactly parrying, because I haven't quite learned the parrying in the game, but yeah. So it was pretty easy. Thankfully, I haven't had too many of those. Like really, it's really just the vampire chick, Enma, and Nue that I've had more difficulty with, and the others have been not as bad. So, yeah.
And then I'm also pleased to hear about Returnal and how that you're definitely enjoying that. I will say though, clearly you are lying about your performance because you do not have the PS5 SSD. You know, that's the pure power that, you know, if you had that SSD in your PC, then, you know, maybe you could get 4K 120 high, you know, high everything maxed out and full ray tracing, but you know, you don't have that SSD, so you know, you work with what you can get. But I am glad that it is definitely fun. I mean, it definitely looked like a fun game to play, and you know, hearing that it actually is as good as, you know, what people said, it makes me curious now. Is it still on sale that you know of?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I just looked on Instant Gaming and I happened to find it. It was a few days ago, but I haven't checked since probably Monday or something.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably take a look at that later on, but yeah, definitely glad to hear that. And oh yeah, and I'm definitely glad that you're enjoying Guardians of the Galaxy. And I definitely agree with you that it definitely based on what you said, it shouldn't be verified, because I mean one of the key things about verification or having that verification status is the fact that it runs out of the box.
Yeah.
And if you need to go and tinker with the BIOS settings of all things just to get the game to run properly, that does not sound like running out of the box to me. So I mean, hopefully, you know, maybe there are some patches. Well, I mean, granted, you said that it's more so the Steam Deck itself running it by default 1 gig of RAM, which I don't know why Valve did that.
Yeah.
Even if they wanted to be like efficient with the battery life, I mean, it still seems too low. I think they should at least have it be adjustable, variable depending on on how much demand is needed. And it actually makes me wonder, could you possibly get maybe more performance out of some games if that's the case?
I was wondering about that too. I haven't tried anything out yet to see, but I'm definitely wondering about it. I mean, I can't think of whether I have any games right now that are installed that run worse that would be worth trying out. I mean, like, I'd be curious about a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for example, see if that makes any difference on that. But yeah,
because now I'm just curious now, learning maybe I should actually try some games I dismissed because I wasn't satisfied, because maybe I could get some better, at least a little bit better performance.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's worth checking out at least. So yeah, I'll probably have to try it out with some other stuff and see if any difference I can make. I mean, like, initially I was trying to do high textures, because I usually will do that in game. You know, I'll do low on everything else and then do the textures higher. And then it was, you know, giving me that single digit frame rate, and I thought, oh, well, maybe I better not do that after all, because it seems like that's going to badly impact the performance. And then it turns out that even with everything on low, it was still doing that, and it wasn't anything to do with that. So I haven't tried changing the settings again, but the game actually looks really good even with low settings. Like, I'm really impressed with how good it looks. So yep.
Okay. Good stuff. And that, I think that's it from me then.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's get into the news. So we have gotten to the point, and technically a couple of days, by the time this comes out, in fact, it will already be at that point, that the Steam Deck has reached its 3rd anniversary. And there's definitely plenty of stuff we can say about this, and just, you know, what the Steam Deck has been for us as gamers, especially as PC gamers. But the estimated number of sales that it's had in the past 3 years is approximately 4 million, potentially a little bit more, and that's just through 2024. Now, for those who are comparing this to the Switch, obviously those numbers are paltry in comparison. People who are comparing it to the PlayStation Portal, it's paltry in comparison. However, there are some very important factors to consider here. Number one, obviously it's a very niche product. I mean, it's a handheld PC. It's not a console. So that's the number one thing, is it's niche and it's a handheld PC. Number two, it is only sold through Valve directly, not sold in stores, whereas those other products are all sold in stores all over the place. You can buy them just about anywhere. So there's that massive difference. Those are the two big things to consider when looking at this. And I guess third, which kind of goes along with the first point, is that this was never intended to compete with the Switch. It was simply, I mean, it's its own thing, and as far as we can tell, it is the best selling of handheld PCs. So, with all that being said, why don't you give me your thoughts?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Like we're already at the 3 year mark. I mean, it doesn't necessarily seem like too long ago that it released, but I mean, we had the initial release, then the following year we had the OLED, and here we are now, entering year 3. And I mean, I'm definitely satisfied with the Steam Deck. It definitely brought me back into handheld gaming when I pretty much was just like, I've dropped out of handheld gaming. I mean, the Switch initially did that for me. It brought me back into handheld gaming, but then, after I dropped off from that, I was like, I'm not doing handheld gaming anymore. And then Steam Deck came out. I was like, I'll give it a shot. And then, I mean, from the first year of me owning it, it was my most played platform, and it still is to this day. I mean, it's been, as far as like my Steam metrics go, it's just like, yeah, most of your time was spent on the Steam Deck over your own PC. So that just shows how much I actually enjoy this device. But going to what you mentioned, it's also incredible the fact that you said it blows it even though it, as you said, it's small potatoes compared with the Nintendo Switch, but it sold more than the other handheld PCs, especially with like the Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go. Those are sold in multiple outlets, but the Steam Deck still outsold those, even though it was only available on one platform, which is interesting. Granted, there are certain things that kind of helped on that end. Is the fact that the Steam Deck, except for maybe like a few variants, is cheaper than the other PC handhelds, which definitely helped it a lot. And I mean, I think also to a degree, brand recognition. I mean, even though people know MSI, people know Asus, people know MSI and Lenovo and all of them, people know Valve though, because that's where most people buy their games on PC from Steam, so they go and buy the games there. And so they said, hey, we can just buy a handheld from them as well. So I mean, that definitely helps, but I think also another thing is the fact that Valve sort of paid attention to what the community wanted to a degree, because there were certain things that they improved upon, with later revisions to the Steam Deck, but then also with the OLED, providing certain things and features. I mean, for one thing, an OLED screen, larger screen, better battery life, having a lighter handheld altogether, and even also certain stuff with like the thumbsticks being different as well. That definitely helped with the success that the deck has. Of course, what happens in the future with the successor to the to the Steam Deck. We don't know. Valve, of course, has said that they don't want to make a new model until they are satisfied with the leaps in performance that will be made. But who knows how soon that could be? Because after all, I mean, we don't know. We have speculation, but based on the current, or I guess soon to be released mobile AMD chips, those are supposedly going to have a whole lot of performance, especially with the I guess I don't know what they're called, if they're like called AI cores or something like that, but essentially I guess you could consider them sort of like the tensor cores. I don't know if it's gonna be sort of like helping with upscaling or something like that, or hopefully making things more efficient. But it's definitely supposed to be more powerful than even their latest mobile APU. So, if that's something that could be in the next deck, that would be pretty cool. So maybe next year, or if not the year after, we could see an official Steam Deck too. But I mean, all things considered, I think Valve has done a good job with what they've done here, and I'm satisfied with my Steam Deck. Both the original model, the OLED, it's been good. And I'm glad also that they improved certain things with like logistics, because initially it was just only available in the US and also I think certain parts of the Europe. But then with the OLED releasing, they opened up to Japan, they opened up to Australia, and even some other countries as well. So if they're able to get more devices out to more people, hey, that's great in my book. But yeah, definitely have had a good time with the deck, and look forward to using it some more. But that's essentially everything I have.
As I've said many times before, obviously this was never intended to compete with the Nintendo Switch. And it undoubtedly exists because of the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch is what took something that was even more niche before, handheld PC gaming, and, of course, did it in console form. Nintendo took something that was more niche with handheld PC gaming, put it in console form, and made it significantly more popular. It was literally a game changer for so many people, myself included. And I've been a fan of handhelds for a really long time, especially as an adult, with a job and everything, having something that I could conveniently take with me, like to play on breaks at work or that sort of thing, was a huge deal. And the Switch really changed things for me because of the fact that it gave me something so much more powerful than the other handhelds that I had. And of course, took the Nintendo home console, put it in handheld form, and basically you have the Wii U, a little bit more powerful than the Wii U, in a truly portable form. And the Steam Deck, of course, took what Nintendo did and decided to do it for PC gaming. Give us something that's more affordable, starting as low as $400 for the base version. And as you go up, of course, it's more expensive for more storage and everything else. But it took what Nintendo did and did it for PC gaming. Now, the purpose of this was, of course, beyond the fact that it was providing something for PC gamers as well as something for people to get into PC gaming, a cheap entry point. It also was... I forgot where I was going with this. It also was a way to bring more people into SteamOS, make the adoption of Linux as a platform for PCs, something that people were more interested in. And it's undoubtedly started to gain more of a market share. It's still nowhere near as prevalent as Windows, but it's made some serious headway. And that's why we have even other handheld PCs like the Lenovo Legion Go S that is Proton based, that it's using SteamOS instead of Windows. And the fact that they've added, these Proton compatibility layers in order to make it so that you can run games that were not built for Linux on a Linux device. And a lot of times with ease has been huge. Now, of course, we still don't have every PC game able to be played on Linux, and certain anti-cheats prevent that from being an option as well. But it's still just really impressive what they've been able to do with that, and the amount of sales that they've had. Yeah, 4 million isn't that much when you compare it to the Switch, when you compare it to these other things. But you also, I mean, when you consider the fact that this is a handheld PC and not a console, it's an open platform. You can install Windows on it if you want to. You can play your entire Steam library. I mean, 4 million is still nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, you can't look at it and say, oh, this is terrible, unless you're only looking at it from the perspective of consoles. And when also you consider the fact that this is sold only through a single marketplace, through a single vendor. It's only sold through Valve. You can only buy it through Steam. It hasn't been advertised very much. It's basically just functioning off of word of mouth. It's not doing bad. Now, the other thing is that it also has... I mean, I guarantee that it's not just me, it's not just you, but the people who have bought a Steam Deck have bought way more games since getting a Steam Deck than they bought before. Now, of course, some people already had ridiculous backlogs like you, and others who have even larger backlogs. I mean, I've seen some people who literally have thousands of games, and I can't even imagine that. But, you know, for every bit of money that's lost on those Steam Decks, they're making up for it in software sales. Even people buying a bunch of cheap games, they're still buying a bunch of games. And true, that's not every single person. But like, I know some people, several people in the Married to the Games Discord who Steam Deck, and in some cases other handheld PCs, it's their first foray into PC gaming. And they went for it. They've gone with this simple, cheap entry point, and they've been enjoying it. Now, they're still not off of consoles, and that's fine. I mean, I don't expect most people are going to make the switch 100%, but dipping their toe in with the Steam Deck. And I think that's one of the things that is great about this device, is that it is a way for people to dip their toe into PC gaming. They can start to learn, you know, as much as it's been made out to be like super intimidating, super difficult to deal with, a lot of times it's really not that difficult. Now, yes, there are definitely edge cases, some situations where it's frustrating as all get out trying to get a game working. But those are very small, few and far between. I mean, I have had some situations like that, obviously. You know, I talked about my experience trying to run Dragon Age Origins before, and it wasn't until you suggested using the Heroic launcher when I tried that took care of my problem. But before that, it was a big headache trying to get it to work. And, you know, then there's like, when I originally tried to get Red Dead Redemption 2, the Rockstar launcher version working, it just wouldn't work. It was impossible. It would not work. And didn't matter what I did, I could not get it to work. And so then I ended up buying it for Steam, and it ran great. No problems. It's just, there are pluses and minuses always to PC gaming, as we've said many times before. I think ultimately, like so many other things that are difficult, it's worth the effort. And, you know, I'm glad to see that the Steam Deck is doing as well as it is. It is, as far as we can tell, the best-selling handheld PC available right now. And that's good enough. And because it's the best-selling, it's also helped to make SteamOS more of a viable platform for people to play PC games. I'm still not at a point where I'm ready to make the switch to Linux, because there's just enough things that are like, just enough issues with compatibility with some of the software that I use on a regular basis to where I'm just like, I don't know if I can quite commit to that much of a change. Plus, of course, just the amount of work it would be to get all my stuff transferred over to a new operating system and relearn a bunch of stuff. but I still think it's good what it's done. Obviously, it's never going to reach console levels of sales. It just won't. And that's fine, because that's not what it was ever designed to do. It is competing with the other PC handhelds, which I will also mention. I think it's also important to note, is that as much as the Switch was something that helped the Steam Deck to become a thing, to give us an affordable PC handheld, the Steam Deck is what has given us competition from all these other manufacturers, because it was after the Steam Deck had its first year, was doing really well, that you have Asus and Lenovo and various other hardware developers starting to put out more cost-efficient handheld PCs. And you'll still have like what's that one brand that's been making them for a while?
GPD.
GPD, yeah, GPD, doing the GPD wins and all that stuff, that are going to be more expensive and that sort of thing. And a lot of times what they're doing is really cool. But for those, for all of those, you have the bigger hardware manufacturers competing in this space, trying to put out a better product to, outsell the Steam Deck. And it's good for us as consumers. It's good for them. I mean, it's just great across the board. So I'm really happy with what the Steam Deck is doing from that standpoint. And for me, as someone who has loved PC gaming for years, but for so many years was basically like, I really want to play this on a portable device. And in some cases, many cases, I would buy the game on Switch, either for the first time or for the second time, just because I wanted that portable experience, because it was easier to find time to play here and there on a portable device. The Steam Deck has completely changed my PC gaming. It's made it so that I almost exclusively play my Steam Deck for PC gaming. Now, of course, there are situations where I don't. I mean, games that are too demanding for the Steam Deck, yeah, I'll be playing those on my desktop. But sometimes I'll just stream the game from my desktop to my Steam Deck, because I love the form factor. I love the back buttons. I mean, like, the back buttons have really spoiled me, and I'm hoping that the next Steam controller is built with the same layout as the Steam Deck, because that would probably be the only controller I would use for most games. Like, I'll still use the DualSense for PlayStation exclusive, or for the PlayStation published titles that actually utilize the DualSense. And I'll, it's not like my Xbox controller is gonna gather dust, because I still love that controller. But it ends up getting used more often by my kids, because when we do multiplayer, I have a PlayStation controller and I have an Xbox controller, and so usually that's how we get it used. But I mean, the Steam Deck though has really changed my PC gaming, because it's made it possible for me to actually play games from my library that I've had for years, things that I just hadn't gotten to. Of course, the one thing that I don't like about it is that it's made it hard for me when I really want to have a physical copy of a game, because then I'm like, I think I have to double dip so that I can still get the physical copy, even though I'm probably not going to play the Switch version, because I want to play it with better performance and better visuals and everything else. But yeah, it's been so nice, and it's been great for getting into longer games as well, because it's made it so much easier than having to be at my desk and playing a game there. I can play, for 10 minutes here and there on a game, put it in, sleep mode, and then come back to it later. It's like, yeah, no problem. Instead of, when I'm on my desktop and either have to keep the game paused and, my computer asleep or whatever for the day, or I just only have certain times of the day when I can actually play, and it's just super convenient being able to play the Steam Deck. I mean, like, I've been thinking about it, and I've probably played almost exclusively my Steam Deck this year, apart from when I've been recording gameplay videos. It's been like, yeah, it's crazy. And now I should say, of my handheld devices. So that's more of a clarification, because I haven't really played my Switch much at all. My kids are actually playing the Switch more now than I am. And the Steam Deck is just, it's convenient. I can, if we have a TV show on, or if we're listening to a podcast or something where I don't have to, actually watch it, I just have the Steam Deck play game on there. And if I, if I need to take a little break from work, got 15 minutes, hey, turn on the Steam Deck, play there. It's just super convenient, super nice. And even though there are definitely games where they don't run well enough to be worth playing, or at least haven't in the past, I might have to test some of those out with the improved video RAM there. But I'm still just like amazed at this device, and I would say it's very likely that Steam Deck 2 is going to be a day one purchase for me whenever that happens, because I've been so happy with it. So, but of course, that's also assuming that they actually do an OLED screen for the Steam Deck 2, which they better. But anyway, that's really all I have to say. I could probably go on and on and on, but I'd probably just be repeating myself. So,
Yeah, and I'm just gonna quickly add this here because I can't believe I neglected this. Which you mentioned, the fact that the Steam Deck contributed a whole lot to Linux gaming, and I mean, really, if it wasn't for the Steam Deck, I wouldn't be gaming on Linux as I am today. So I mean, the contributions that Valve did with Proton and trying to make SteamOS improving upon what it was before, because they of course had SteamOS for the Steam machines, but those weren't. It was not where it needed to be. But they've made constant improvements, and it's gotten a whole lot better. And as you've said, it's not perfect, but it's way better than what it once was. I mean, even today, it's way better than what it was at launch.
mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, they've been putting more effort in there, and it's just been a continuously improving experience. And I'm definitely grateful for that on that end.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that topic?
No, sir.
You want to cover this thing about Monolith Studios shutting down?
Sure. So, so recently I guess going back a bit, a few weeks ago we talked about how the Wonder Woman game has, production was being restarted because of, they said they were going to redesign everything and build everything from the ground up. Well, Warner Brothers Games has come out and said that the game is canceled out. It's completely gone. And not only that, but they are shutting down 3 studios as well. Monolith Productions, which is the studio that was making Wonder Woman, Player First Games, and Warner Brothers Games San Diego. This was something that was originally announced by, I believe this was Jason Schreier. But here's the, I guess, full statement that was made. We have had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises, Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. After careful consideration, we are closing 3 of our development studios, Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and Warner Brothers Games San Diego. This is a strategic change in direction and not a reflection of these teams or the talent that consists within them. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman video game will not move forward. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest quality experience possible for the iconic character, and unfortunately this is no longer possible within our strategic priorities. This is another tough decision, as recognized Monolith's storied history of delivering epic fan experiences through amazing games. We greatly admire the passion of the 3 teams and thank every employee for their contributions. As difficult as today is, we remain focused on and excited about getting back to producing high-quality games for our passionate fans and developed by our world-class studios and getting our games businesses back to profitability and growth in 2025 and beyond. Now, I've got my thoughts on the matter, but I want to hear your thoughts on this first.
Well, I guess I can't say I'm surprised this is happening. Um, I think it sucks that it's happening because, well, between the fact that the idea of a Wonder Woman game with the Nemesis system sounded really interesting, and the fact that typically they've made some solid games. Monolith has made some solid games. I'm a bit disappointed from that standpoint. Now, I can't say that like Wonder Woman as a character, as a superhero, like I cared that much about it, but I was certainly willing to give it a shot. And I thought that the Nemesis system that was introduced in Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor, and that was also in Shadow of War, was a really cool system, and I really liked it. With this shutting down, though, that system goes away. Basically, they had it was a patent, I believe, so something along those lines, where nobody else could use that system except for them, and it's locked down for 10 years, or at least 10 years from whenever they locked it down. So I think that part is also very disappointing. I wish that there were more examples of studios where they could actually just pass off a project to someone else if it's having issues. I understand why they're not, but I don't know. I was just looking for something that would be interesting from these studios. And it's not as though I have to have these games, because right now I have too many games to play already, and I will continuously have too many games to play regardless of that. And it's not like I was hyped about this game by any stretch. I mean, the game was announced at the Game Awards in 2019, and we haven't seen anything since then, or at least I think it was 2019. It was either 2019 or 2021. It might have been actually 2021. But either way, it's been a while since it was announced, and the recent thing about it having a reboot, it's like, okay, that's a bummer, but it is what it is. But yeah, now it's just straight up canceled, and the studio's closed. And I don't know those other studios, like, do you know what games they had developed? Because I didn't look into it.
Um, Player First did Multiverses. I don't remember
Okay,
what the Warner Brothers San Diego did.
gotcha. Yeah, so I don't know. It's I don't really know what else to say. I guess that's all I really have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are several things here that make me wonder what are they saying? I mean, for one thing, in their statement talking about they want to focus on the different key franchises, and saying Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, and DC. I'm like, well, Wonder Woman's DC. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? I mean, you're literally canceling a DC game right there. But they're probably thinking about, well, we're gonna focus on our speculatively more profitable, I guess you could say, franchise. Like, there's a rumor that they're going to be making another Batman game, which, I mean, I feel like at this point might be a little bit too late, because a lot of people are kind of soured after Suicide Squad, which is probably around the time when they said we much would rather have had a Batman game than Suicide Squad, especially with the way the game was designed, and other aspects of the game as well. So like, I feel like at this point gamers are going to be very aversive to what could be coming out. I mean, granted, that was made by Rocksteady, and granted, even then, it wasn't even by the original Rocksteady developers who actually made the Arkham games. But that focus, it's probably a bit too late for that. I mean, to a degree, also, some people might even say, yeah, we've had plenty of Batman games, but how about you actually try something new and different? I mean, sure, similar to you, Wonder Woman was not something that I was anticipating or looking forward to, but at the same time, it at least was something different, or at least it was going to be something different. And I mean, for one thing, also, I still would like to see a Superman game because, maybe there are a few here and there that are decent, but there hasn't been one truly definitive. This is a great Superman game. I mean, a lot of
Superman
them have just
64, come on. You gotta fly through those rings and get beat
uh,
up by regular criminals.
well, and then of course, you have Superman Returns where the final boss is a tornado. You have to fight that. But, we haven't had any actual definitive Superman game. I mean, I feel like there was one based on the animated series, which wasn't Superman 64. That was on like the PS2 and GameCube, but I think that one at best was just decent. So, I really wanted to see him actually get a good game. But, maybe not if Warner Brothers thinks, well, we're just gonna go with what works, which is just make more Batman games, which I mean, unless they're going to continue and like maybe do what people wanted, which was like do Batman Beyond, which part of me still would like to see that happen. I feel like it's really overplayed if you're just gonna say, all right, we're just gonna make a new Batman game, and it's sort of like circumventing the events. Like if we're gonna do like a soft reboot or do something like say a continuation, like with Gotham Knights, I don't see how people are really gonna be getting too excited about it. But still just try something different. That's what I would say. But it really does suck with Monolith being shut down because they have had in the past they've made these games. Of course, they made Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War. But then going back further, they made the Condemned Criminal Origins games. They also did, which I'm really disappointed about this because there's literally no way for me to play this game since it was I think the game was just never ported to PC, which is why I can't play it, which was these FPS games called No One Lives Forever, which was just sort of like a sort of like spy FPS game, sort of like in a vein of I guess you could say a sci-fi-ish vein of James Bond, essentially. That aspect. So I heard those were some fun games. I wanted to try those games, but they never got PC versions, surprisingly, and they also never got any sort of remaster remake. So they're pretty much just very old. I think they were on like PS2 and original Xbox titles, and I've heard they're good, but nothing's happened with them. And like you said, I think one of the greatest crimes here is that the Nemesis system, which was stuck only with Wonder Woman at this point, is not going to be used. And also, I also did go back and check. The patent expires in 2036. So we've got another 11 years to go before any other company can use the Nemesis system, which sucks. I mean, and it really just stifles creativity in the gaming sphere as a whole because if we have something that works and it's something new, it's different, it's fresh, and even if it's just like something small and something that if the game is just something that is common. I mean, take the Souls games. I mean, they're essentially just action RPGs, but the elements that make those games are unique enough that it's its own experience, that it's its own subgenre in a sense. So imagine if From Software said, we're going to patent all these mechanics, so no one else can use these mechanics but us. We would never have a whole slew of games. Like we wouldn't have we would still have Neo technically in a sense because if Koei Tecmo just removed a lot of those elements, it would essentially just be a different version of Ninja Gaiden. But to a degree, we wouldn't have Neo. We wouldn't have Lies of P. We wouldn't have a lot of the 2D types of the games like Salt and Sanctuary. And man, I'm oh gosh, there's the new one, Elder Lilies, and then a lot of other games. We wouldn't have these games because of the fact if From Software said it's decided we're gonna patent our mechanics, I really hate it when that happens. And going back even further to the early 2000s, Bandai Namco did that with mini games or loading screens, and so it was a cool thing, playing your game and like while the game's loading, having these little mini games you play while doing that. They patented it, so no other game company can do it. I mean, it's not a big thing in the grand scheme of things since it's just a loading screen, but think of how many games, it would have been fun to do something while you're waiting for the game to actually load in.
Yeah.
So like, I really cannot stand when mechanics are being patented because it just stifles the creativity of what developers can do. And I mean, especially if there's something that is cool, it catches on, and people find ways to even make new ways to play useless mechanics. It just stifles things in the long run. So I really hate Warner Brothers for doing that. But all in all, though, to summarize, it's just a sucky situation, and I'm not thrilled with many aspects of this.
Yeah. But I guess it is what it is, and there's not really anything more we can say. So, all right. Well, going into our next topic, we haven't yet really talked about the launch of the NVIDIA 50 series cards. We're not going to go into every single detail of what the pricing was and the specs as they were on paper at the time of announcement and all of that, but there have definitely been some big issues with the way that these cards have launched. One of those issues being that in some cases they have actually started fires. I mean, thankfully it seems like it never got to the point of actually setting a house on fire or anything, but catching fire in a PC build or melting cables. There's missing ROPs, render output pipelines, or raster operation pipelines, render backends, render output partitions, or just ROPs for short, are fundamental units in every GPU. Think of them as a specialized load/store units that read and write pixel information onto a graphic card's VRAM. They also handle operations such as blending and certain types of anti-aliasing. So, I know that was, for the average person, that was just like another language, and I totally understand because I don't even fully understand it myself. But basically, they have left out some of these units, which means that, in short, the games don't run as well as they should because of that. But it's missing things that it's supposed to have as part of how this thing is designed. But it doesn't end there. There's also the issue where these cards do not support what was considered like a major NVIDIA exclusive feature back in, well, really like 15 years or so ago. Something that was an old feature that worked up through the 40 series of cards was NVIDIA Physics. And it basically just additional graphical effects and that sort of thing that could only be done with the NVIDIA cards. And it's been removed. It's not even an option in the 50 series cards, which means backwards compatibility with older games, at least if you're using Physics. And I don't think that there's any game where it's required to use Physics, but it was an option that just basically took a game to the next level, at least at the time. Those games don't run properly at all. I saw an example of the original Mirror's Edge, which came out in 2008, was running at single-digit frames per second because of the fact that these cards do not support that feature, which is insane. I mean, I remember the first time when I started getting into PC gaming a bit more, and I was trying to play Arkham Asylum on my laptop, which I still have that laptop from 2010. And my laptop had an ATI card because that was before they got purchased by AMD. And I made the mistake of turning on Physics and it was running at single digit frames per second until I turned that off, and it's like, okay, yeah, that fixed the problem. But it's it's very much a situation where it was, I mean, the fact that a modern graphics card cannot support a feature that old is insane. And I won't get too much into my thoughts on the matter. I'll talk more about it a bit later. But basically, there's just, I believe there's other issues too with the 50 series. I can't remember. I can't remember offhand if there's anything else other than the fact that the price is ridiculous for what they're getting and all of that. But that being said, I'm sure you have plenty to say on the matter, so I'm gonna let you take it away.
Oh man. I mean, I don't even know if we can really call it a launch, because what launch? I mean, there what cards were there even being sold in the first place? Which also actually just as I was getting ready to like set up, I didn't have a chance to forward this to you, but I saw something saying that NVIDIA possibly limited the number of GPUs being sold at launch, or roughly at launch, to make it because of the fact they would sell out. And in fact, today NVIDIA actually had their quarterly earnings reports, and so it would look better if, to say we sold out all of our GPUs, and make the stock shares go up as a result. And then, later on, GPUs might slowly start being available again, which is pretty scummy, if you ask me. To do something like that just to make your shareholders happy. But I think all in all, the 50 series, at least from launch, has been a complete disaster. Now, I think it was just the high end. I don't think it was like the mid-range cards of like the 40 series. The high end 40 series had some issues here and there of cables burning up as part of the 12 volts power, as opposed to the standard, I think, 8 volts that has been a standard for years. And so those were an issue, and we believe that NVIDIA had addressed the issue and had fixed it. But now it's a common, or at least it's common enough that NVIDIA is addressing it, that different tech YouTubers are testing this out and saying, yeah, this is an issue that is way more common than it should be. That's a problem right there. It's the fact that it got worse than it was the previous generation, which is insane to think about. And this is dangerous stuff. I mean, if your hardware just just catches fire, that's a problem. And it's like even worse. Like, say, for example, you just have your computer idle, and say you like step away for a while, or if you like leave the house and you come back later on, and as a result, there's a whole fire. That's dangerous stuff. That's not good at all. So I don't know what the issue is, but NVIDIA definitely needs to get on this, because this is a problem, and they should be focusing more on that than worrying about how does selling out of GPUs look to our shareholders and investors. Because let me tell you that, I mean, they probably won't care, but if there's a problem, if there's a huge scandal of fires breaking out, those investors won't be happy later on, though, I'll tell you that much, and they might start selling. But then also the fact that a lot of these units are missing their ROPs and are essentially, you're buying since you're simply crippling the GPU. If you're buying a 5090 and you're getting maybe like a 5080, then you're not paying what your money's not going toward what you thought you were getting,
Right.
and you're getting worse performance. Which, I mean, I think that the prices of some of these cards have been ridiculous anyway. But to spend even more and get less than what you initially thought, I think that's even worse. So I don't know what the issue is, and this isn't and again, similar to the cable issues, this isn't just like a one-off case here. This is enough that multiple people who are buying these GPUs are saying, "Oh man, I'm missing stuff. Like I'm not getting the performance I should be getting because the card's missing what it should have." So like this is a complete disaster, and I I mean part of it might just be NVIDIA being very cocky, being on top of the GPU market, which
Hmm.
is very sad to say. But you know, it's really messed up. I mean, granted, Nvidia has at least they've been shifting their focus away from gamers for quite a while. I mean, go back to the 30 series. That was when they started to shift their focus by turning toward uh, crypto miners. You know, they started to focus on like, hey, you can use our GPUs to mine Bitcoin, all your other crypto and stuff like that. And I mean, and they were even caught later on deliberately selling GPUs to miners. Um, you know, like especially like during the shortage, and especially because there was the big shortage because of COVID and stuff, and so you couldn't have chips being made and stuff being manufactured and shipped out. On top of those issues, they deliberately were withholding GPUs to not sell to gamers. They were caught later on and fined because of that. And and then after all the crypto craze kind of died down, they said, "Oh, well, now we've got AI, so let's focus on selling to AI." And so that's been their more thing they've been shifting toward, and gamers again are being left out in the dust as a result. And you would hope that this would help spur AMD to try to seize the day, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that, because I mean the 9070 is supposed to the 9070 97X. I mean, for one thing, also AMD has said they're not focusing on high tier cars anymore, so they're pretty much now just doing mid range and below, as of right now. But I mean, if they blow this opportunity, because Nvidia set them up, like all AMD needs to do is just sell a good GPU and make sure that it's reasonably priced. Like that's all they have to do right now. If they can do that, also make sure they have enough units. I would also add that as well.
Right.
Um, if they can do that, they could really seize a good. I mean, it's not gonna be incredible or anything like that, but they can get enough of a market share where people might consider buying AMD. Because I mean, they were able to do it with CPUs. Now, granted, also in that situation, that was their fault, but Intel was dominating the CPU market, and AMD their CPUs sucked for a long time, or at least they were at best they were decent. But it wasn't until Ryzen came along that they actually had something that was good. And then once Intel slipped a little bit, they got their foot in the door, and then they sort of like flipped the tables on Intel, and that's sort of like they're very. I mean, Intel got back in the game, so it's a very competitive market where neither really can outpace the other, but that's a good thing for consumers because you have those choices. With the GPU side, though, Nvidia is pretty much on top. Like people are only going primarily to Nvidia, and I know that like AMD also had their issues like with GPUs as well, but I mean they've gotten better. But people most are more so on Nvidia, so like no one's really caring too much about like how the cards are doing. So like they really actually need to take this moment to do what they can. And I mean Intel, I've heard their GPUs are decent, especially once they've actually fixed with driver compatibility with older games. But the problem I think Intel has right now is just the fact that there are no GPUs to buy like anywhere. Which I mean, I've looked and there's like they're just all out of stock everywhere, unless you want to go and buy one from a third-hand reseller who's charging twice as much as it originally was. But yeah, like Nvidia, it's just a nightmare right now with what Nvidia is doing. And I'm disappointed to see people who bought who have consistently been buying GPUs after generation of high end ones at that, and like especially now when you buy one, you're really getting, hopefully just metaphorically, burned in the process. Because I mean, I've seen people who bought a 3090, then they bought a 4090, you know, and and they most likely are going to buy a 5090. And I'm just like, why are you dropping like $15 to $2,000 on a GPU every generation when like the one you had before was very capable and will have lasted you a long time? Like, and now if you bought one, you're probably getting one that's underperforming or is just a hazard in general.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, don't do that. But yeah, that, I guess that's essentially everything I have to say about this whole fiasco. Shame on NVIDIA.
Yeah. I mean, we will say a lot of negative things. I mean, like, it seems like probably seems like some people that we pick more on consoles than we do on PCs, and in general, yeah, I'd say that's probably a little more accurate. But NVIDIA just is not doing themselves any favors, and for the brief period of time, very early after the original announcement, that I halfway considered the idea of buying a 50 series card, because I haven't upgraded. I mean, the last time I upgraded was in 2019, and that was a 2018 card that I upgraded to. I'm not doing it at all now with the 50 series. I'm definitely back to the point where if I upgrade sometime in the not too distant future, it's going to be an AMD card. And even if it's just a mid-level or whatever, it'll probably still be an upgrade over what I have right now. But something that I didn't mention before about these cards that I also really strongly dislike. Last gen they introduced frame generation. This generation, or 50 series, is multi-frame generation, so you can get up to 3 fake frames per real frame. So it looks like you're getting a lot more frames per second, but your latency is also is also increased by 3 times, because it's three fake frames for every 1 real frame. I've said it before and I'll say it again, frame generation is not good. Frame generation is terrible. It only adds latency. Now, some examples it's not as bad as others. Like when I used it on Horizon Forbidden West, the little bit that I tried it out with FSR3's frame generation, it wasn't bad. Same with Ghost of Tsushima. It wasn't bad, but there was just enough latency to where when I turned it off, the game felt better in both situations. And of course on the Steam Deck, it's like it didn't improve the frame rate that much, and it added a buttload of latency to where it was just like, I cannot play this way. This is terrible. The thing is that NVIDIA is not actually doing a drastic difference in performance. It's supposed to be a bump in performance each time around. This time, instead of having actual real performance boosts with this graphics card series, they're giving you fake performance boosts. And I don't like it. And I will not purchase one of those cards because of that. Now, I realize that, yes, frame generation is still something that is optional. But for the amount of money they're charging, there needs to be significant performance increases. It cannot be just AI-generated fake frames as your performance increases. That's not good enough. Especially not when you're charging $2,000 for your top-of-the-end card. And that's only if sellers actually stick to MSRP, which that's a whole nother issue that's been coming up with them not selling anywhere near MSRP. And I'm irritated because like I've been considering sometime soon doing an upgrade for my PC. Just because it's like, it's been 6 years. It wouldn't hurt for me to do an upgrade, and it's not necessarily like I've been unsatisfied with my performance overall, even if I would love to just see a 120 frames per second across the board. But when I look at what NVIDIA especially is doing, it just makes me more and more want to stick with the build I already have and not even bother with upgrading. And I mean, of course, it doesn't help that when I think about upgrading, if I actually go with a newer graphics card, like something that would be around the 40 series or better, I'm probably going to have to rebuild the entire thing, because I'm probably going to need new motherboard, new CPU, new RAM in order to be able to do that. And probably realistically a new power supply. I've been using the same power supply since 2016. I mean, I never upgraded that because I didn't need to. I had enough power that I had what I needed. But it's like, it'll be expensive to do a build, and at that point I'm thinking I may just have to like straight up do a like a brand new computer completely, like get a new case, do new everything, and then just move this one to like being the TV, the living room PC or something to use on the TV. And but then of course I have to move everything over, and I mean, like, the only thing I could think to do potentially with that would be taking all of, like, keeping the like, getting a smaller case just to move over my motherboard with all of the parts connected to that, minus maybe the hard drives, to a new case, and then keep all the hard drives in this build. I mean, in the new build, and just get like a one single hard drive specifically for the new bit, or for the what would become a living room PC. But I don't know. I have a hard time with all of that. Yeah, I guess I technically could just sell the PC even. That would be an option as well, but I don't know. I'm not anywhere near the point where like I really truly want to upgrade right now, because it's just going to be way too expensive. And I don't need it. I'm not at a point where I actually need to upgrade my PC. It's just, you know, it's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes it's just like, you know, but I could have better performance. Like, it wouldn't hurt. And maybe going with kind of a clean slate would make it a little bit easier to manage my hard drives and everything else, and not have so much bloat on my computer. Because I mean, I know that really the bloat on my computer is just because I haven't done a good enough job keeping things organized as I go, so it's entirely my fault. But it's still just, you know, anyway. That all being said, I really think that people need to stay away from the 50 series cards as much as humanly possible until everything gets fixed. If NVIDIA is actually going to fix it. Not just the temperature issue, potential fire hazards, which especially want to avoid that, but also all the other things where they're gypping you. You know, they're really not giving you what you're paying for, and it's just not acceptable. There's absolutely no good excuse for this, and it really is just arrogance and greed. That's all it is. This is like back in, you know, when the PS3 launched at $600. It was arrogance and greed. They got too big of a head, and they suffered because of it. I mean, ultimately they ended up figuring it out, and, you know, they were able to recover from it, and of course now PlayStation's best-selling console by far. Or, well, you know, at least between them and Xbox. But yeah, I hope that AMD doesn't just trip over themselves constantly like they're playing Smash Brothers Brawl. Because that seems to be what they do every time. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the future. I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled, particularly about the new cards from AMD, and find out whether or not they are actually like that raw performance boost that they should have, because I'm not willing to give NVIDIA money for any of their newer cards anymore. Like I feel like upgrading to something from 30 series wouldn't be enough of an upgrade. 40 series would be more of an upgrade, but also would it be worth the cost, especially because the prices are pretty inflated right now too, with people trying to sell those off. And I'm not going to touch the 50 series at all. So I don't know. I guess I might just be rocking my 2080 Ti for another 5 years and just keep using my old computer. And it will get to a point at some point that I won't be able to play the new games anymore. And we'll see where we get with all that. But anyway, I think that's really all I have to say on that matter. You have any other thoughts?
No, nothing else from me. Oh, well, I'll just as a announcement, I guess you could say. So AMD is supposed to have their showcase for the set for the 9070 on Friday.
Okay.
So then I think we should be getting stuff information, especially like the price of the 9070 and the 9070 XT, and also seeing about like performance as well. But granted, based on what the rumors and supposed leaks are, they're relatively around like, I think like the 7090 X or 7090 base or 7090 XT, or like the 4080. So if it's under like $600, if it's something like maybe $550, that would be pretty decent for price to performance. So hopefully,
for sure,
they don't do something stupid like charge $700 for it. Hopefully, we'll see.
For sure. Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right. I think at this point, with as late as it is, let's just go into the last couple things here. First of all, we do have a listener question. So it's another question from Beer Money Vic, who had to give us the question about how many holes a straw has last week. His question for us: it looks like the Nemesis patent is locked away for the next 10 years. Looks like longer, but if you could do a jailbreak on it, what franchise or developer would you give it to?
Well, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, I mean, it might be a bit of a cop out considering the fact that I'm a fan of these two things, but I feel like either A, give it to From Software. Like if they could find a way, if you have like either an NPC or perhaps maybe a mini boss that has that Nemesis system to it, I think that would be pretty fun. It would definitely be annoying sometimes, probably, especially if that boss comes back later on when you least expect it and you're not prepared, and you don't have that much Estus left. That could be annoying, but I think that would be pretty interesting and different, that you could try that out. And the other thing, possibly, and this would more than likely change I definitely know it would change the dynamic and how the mechanics of the game work, but if that was in a Metroid game similar to Metroid Prime Hunters, since those actually had reoccurring bounty hunters that came back late again throughout the game, something like that would be interesting to pan out and seeing if that actually improved, especially if you see it, if like they actually improve like based upon how you play. I would find that very interesting. Now, of course, that would be very specific with that type of Metroid game. It wouldn't apply directly across the board, but I feel like if they sort of like if they remade Prime Hunters, like that's actually what I would want. Remake Prime Hunters, give it a whole new fresh coat of paint, completely change the graphics and stuff like that. Put in that Nemesis system, I'm sold. I'm sold. Day one purchase. In fact, day zero purchase. That's how early I am to that. But yeah, those are the two franchises slash developers I would actually give that system to.
Yeah, I had a hard time thinking of anything. I mean, the FromSoft actually was the one that I did think of, but then I thought how much of a nightmare it would be if it was applied to actual bosses, because it's like you're struggling with this boss and they just get stronger every time they beat you. That would be horrible. That would be so bad.
Oh man, imagine imagine seeing just imagine seeing like the two Prince brothers from Dark Souls 3. Or in my case, you know, who I struggled with the most, seeing Pontiff Sullivan Bear. Oh man, yeah. That would be like progressively getting New Game Plus territory. Additionally, in stacking up.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else specifically for that. I mean, I guess it could be interesting for like a Batman game. You know, or some other kind of superhero game like that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I thought it worked really well for Shadow of Mordor and what I played of Shadow of War. But yeah, I can't really think of any other ones. It's a good question though. I'll have to be thinking about that. If I think of something else over the next week, I'll be sure to mention it on next week's episode. So, thanks Vic for that question.
Yes, thank you.
All right, and did you have any additional discussion topics?
Yeah, I actually had one, which is something that I actually was not certain how I would want to answer this, so I wanted to ask you about this. And what do you think is the future of physical media for consoles in the next two generations? We've seen sales on console, you know, slowly tilt toward digital as far as like where a lot of that's coming from. So, and especially consider the fact that both the Xbox and the PlayStation have digital only versions of their consoles. What do you think this landscape's gonna look like, you know, next generation and the following generation as well, with regards to physical?
Well, I think next generation is going to be the last generation where we have physical hardware for physical media. Which is unfortunate. Well, I should say, at least for PlayStation and Xbox, it's going to be the last generation with physical discs. Nintendo, I think, is going to hold out longer, because they really have, I think, at least a 50-50 split, if not more heavily on the physical. But I think PlayStation and Xbox, this next generation, it's going to drop quite a bit. It's probably going to drop down to like, I think right now it's like either, I think it's like 60-40 on digital versus physical. Maybe 50-50, but probably I think this next generation, as in PS6 and whatever the next Xbox is called, will probably be more like 70-30 on the digital side. Potentially even more than that. And I think that the gen after that, assuming everyone and everything still exists and it's not just, you know, not everyone's gone or what have you, as long as they're still producing stuff, I don't think there will be any physical media at that point. I think it's going to be gone. Not that I want it to be that way, but I think that's what's going to happen. And even if they did still have physical media, with the exception of something from like Limited Run, probably those games will only have installers put on the discs. They won't even have any of the actual game data. I mean, they're probably already moving that direction this current generation. I mean, I know that they've done it with Call of Duty for at least a few years, where all they have is an installer on the disc and they don't actually have any actual data. But yeah, that's pretty much what I think on that matter.
It was just something that I've been sort of thinking about, and I was sort of in discussion with that with someone. I was just like, yeah, that's actually a good question about that. So I thought I'd bring that up this week.
All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Well, let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. So go ahead and start us off.
All right, so my recommendation for the week is going to be Varia Suite. Now, if you are a fan of either Metroid music from Metroid, or metal, then this is for you. These are metal renditions of music from the Metroid games. These are older albums, so they stop, I think, at like Metroid Prime 3, but just music from those games and back. And I bought them long while ago. And I recently remembered them because I was waiting for my train, and I was going through my music, and I found I was like, oh yeah, I haven't listened to this in a while, and I heard, I was like, yeah, this takes me back. But it's definitely great renditions of music from the Metroid games, and I'm not a metal person, but those tracks are just so good, and I really love Kraid's theme because that's one of the best renditions I've heard.
Nice.
And it's definitely worth a listen to. So yeah, definitely Varia Suite. There were 2 albums. I can't remember if they had like different names or not, but just those 2. You can definitely check them out.
Nice. Sounds good. All right. Well, I have a couple more recommendations. My first recommendation is in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There is a chase sequence that you do at the end of the Corel prison thing. And if you are playing on PC, because this is not an option on console, I highly recommend doing mouse and keyboard during that chase sequence. The reason for this is because, and this doesn't really spoil anything major, but you are shooting with Barrett while the car is driving. And when you're doing it with a controller, you're firing with square and triangle, I believe. Maybe also circle. I can't remember. I know square is what you're firing with primarily, and then then I think circles to reload, and square is maybe it's L1 to reload. I can't remember. Anyway, point is that you are moving the vehicle with the right stick, which doesn't make any sense, and you're moving the reticle with the left stick. So when you're trying to avoid getting hit, you have to move with the right stick, which is just, it's counterintuitive if you ever have played any sort of shooter of any kind whatsoever. And then on top of that, because of the fact that you're having to use square for firing, then you are having to take your thumb off of the right stick. So you might need to move and you're trying to fire at the same time. It just doesn't work well. But if you're doing it with mouse and keyboard, you're aiming with the mouse, moving with WASD, and then I think spacebar to reload maybe, which also doesn't make sense, but it's not terrible. I mean, it works. And so it just controls a lot better, and it's a lot easier to get through that sequence with the mouse and keyboard. I would also say, similarly, there is a mini game that you do in Costa del Sol, which is a shooting mini game, just like shooting targets, and way easier with a mouse. So much faster, because you're really only using the mouse for that. You're not moving around or anything. You're just aiming, and it's so much faster with the mouse than it is with the joystick. So that is it for that. My next recommendation is going to be, I'm not sure yet how it will affect other games, but at least for Guardians of the Galaxy on the Steam Deck, if you want to be able to actually play it, you need to go into the system settings, which is done just by holding down the plus button. All right, well, you have to power down your Steam Deck, hold down the plus button as you're booting it up, and just hold it until it brings up the boot menu. and then you can go into system settings and adjust things from there. If you're not sure how to do that, just look it up. It's literally like 5 steps or something. It's very, very simple. Takes no technical knowledge, no typing any commands or anything else. It's just super simple, but set the VRAM to go to 4 gigs instead of the 1 gig that it's set to by default. And that way the game will actually run. And furthermore, it may impact other games. I haven't tested anything out yet. I'm hoping that it does. I'll have to try testing some of that out this week. But yeah. And that is really it for my recommendations. So dissuasions.
All right, so my first dissuasion is going to be do not play Exit 8 on the Steam Deck, and that's primarily only if you're trying to find all the anomalies. If you're trying to just beat the game, sure, you can do that. It's definitely possible. I beat it on the Steam Deck. But if you're trying to find every anomaly, I don't recommend doing it just because of the fact that it's much harder trying to like see everything. And I mean, you don't necessarily need to look at every pixel, but it definitely makes things a whole lot harder than it probably needs to be. But then my second dissuasion is going to be don't use chipotle chili powder at all in refried beans. I made it some more again. I added in less powder. It still had more of a kick than I wanted. So next time I make refried beans, I'm just going to use regular chili powder and not use chipotle chili powder because I'm sorry, I'm not black enough for that.
I would never use chipotle chili powder in refried beans. You can add the spice, but you can't take it out. Yeah. And it's just like, start with just use regular chili powder, and then if you want some more heat, you add it after the fact. Don't add it to the base, because then it's very easy to overdo it. Indeed. Whereas you can use lots of chili powder, lots of regular chili powder in there, and you don't have to deal with any spice. It just adds flavor.
Yep. Lesson definitely learned.
All right, good stuff. Well, my dissuasion is, as I've said in the past, do not buy a 50 series card from NVIDIA. At least not until after they fix all the problems with it, and even then, I would not recommend buying it. I would still dissuade you from buying it. Yeah. It's tough if people are trying to get into PC gaming and they think they want to get the latest and greatest so that they don't have to upgrade for a long time. You just have to be really careful about these things, especially with these brand new cards that launch with all sorts of problems. So just be careful on that front. But I would definitely say don't buy a 50 series card if you can help it. Which I think you can. And that's what I got. So where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. Put out a video this week, just a small fun video, talking about the person I thought most responsible for how Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep ended. You can definitely check that out. I don't have any plans right now or don't have any ideas for the next video, but I might have something depending on when something arrives in the mail. So we'll definitely see how that goes. But yeah.
All right, good stuff. Well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. This week I put out my OLED comparison between the Switch OLED and Steam Deck OLED for Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Go check that out. I think in terms of video and audio quality, this is my best yet, and was the best representation of both platforms. So go check that out. Definitely recommend watching it with headphones though, because you get the full experience that way, and especially if you've never played the Hellblade game before, or Hellblade 2 for that matter. Just check it out. But in terms of what else is coming out for the channel, I don't have anything currently scheduled or specifically planned. I do have a potential guest for a potential another interviewee for Dads in Gaming. I don't know timing on that. It may be a month or two because he said that he's interested, but right now his schedule just doesn't really allow him to do that. So more updates on that when they come up. But assuming it happens, it will be a pretty cool interview. So otherwise, I'm hoping to start working on recording for the Freedom Wars Remastered comparison. I'm just not sure if I'll have time for that this weekend or not. If I have time for it, I'm going to try to record at least one, if not 2 out of 3 of them on Saturday. So we'll see what happens. But then I also have my YouTube cooking channel I have my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. And I didn't put out a recipe this week, but am planning to put up my recipe for smoked pork roast next week, or smoked pulled pork, depending on whether I decide to re-record the intro or not. Really good stuff, really easy, and doable even without a smoker. It just won't be smoked. It'll still be delicious, though. Still well worth making. So, either way, that's planning to go up next week. And then, of course, we have the YouTube channel for the podcast at the Orange Box Podcast. There we put up the video version of the podcast every week, 7 a.m. Central Time, at least ordinarily, assuming there's not any issues with the uploads, which seems to be kind of a flip of a coin most of the time. But either way, that's the intention. And watching the video version, you can not only see our beautiful faces, but you can also see clips from the games we've been playing, as well as games we're talking about in many cases, and sometimes just other video footage for games that are related to the topic at hand. So there's that. And then finally, there is the YouTube channel for the clips from the podcast at the Orange Box Pod Clips. And although it was late this time because I just put them up today, there are all of the different segments from last week's episode put up on the channel there. And finally, there's the audio-only version of the podcast, which goes up on every major podcast platform, including YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Pandora, if I didn't already say that. It's just all over the place. So that goes up at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday, and it's all the same content, just without the video. So I think that is everything. All right. Any final thoughts? Last chance.
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, write down your outros before you have to say them. Orange Box Podcast, out.